It was a bright summer afternoon in Texas Hill Country, the kind of day when sunlight danced on the white chapel walls and wildflowers swayed gently in the warm breeze. The small town had gathered to witness what was meant to be a perfect wedding. Lila May, radiant in her lace gown, smiled shyly as she waited for her groom at the altar. Her heart raced with hope, believing that love could truly conquer all. But that hope shattered in an instant when the man she loved stepped back, shaking his head, his voice echoing coldly across the room. "I can't do this," he said, his words slicing through her like glass. "You're not the woman I want to marry." A heavy silence filled the church. Guests exchanged shocked glances, the sound of whispered gasps rising like waves. Lila froze where she stood, the bouquet trembling in her hands. Her mother covered her mouth in disbelief, and someone's camera clicked at the worst possible moment, capturing her heartbreak forever. The groom's mother tried to pull her son aside, but he simply turned away. Humiliation burned through Lila's chest. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, judging, pitying, some even smiling cruelly. Her vision blurred with tears. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never be seen again. But before she could move, a quiet voice broke through the chaos. A tall, broad-shouldered man rose from the last pew. His weathered Stetson hat cast a shadow over his eyes, and the clack of his boots against the marble floor silenced the murmurs. Jack Dalton, a retired cowboy known around town for his rugged kindness and steady ways, stopped at the front and looked the groom square in the eye. "Son," he said evenly, "a real man doesn't run from love, he protects it." His voice carried authority, not anger, and the crowd held its breath. The groom looked away, unable to meet Jack's gaze. Then Jack turned to Lila, his expression softening. "Ma'am," he said gently, tipping his hat, "any man would be lucky to stand beside a woman with a heart as big as yours." For a moment, no one moved. Then something inside Lila shifted. The trembling in her hands stopped, and she lifted her chin, blinking away her tears. She didn't say a word, she didn't have to. With quiet dignity, she handed her bouquet to a little girl in the front row and walked out of the church, her veil trailing behind her like a white flame in the sunlight. Outside, the warm air hit her face, and she breathed deeply, letting the pain roll off her shoulders. She was no longer the bride who had been rejected, she was a woman rediscovering her worth. The people inside would whisper, but she didn't care. Somewhere deep down, she knew that life wasn't done surprising her yet. 4 days later, Jack Dalton drove his old Ford pickup through the winding desert roads near the Chiricahua Mountains. The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs, painting the sky in gold and crimson. He was heading back to his ranch after a long day at the feed store, thinking about that wedding, about the way that woman had stood up and walked away with such quiet grace. He admired her strength, though he didn't even know her name. But fate had its own plans for Jack Dalton. As he rounded a bend, something on the side of the road caught his eye, a small shape wrapped in a dirty blanket. Jack slammed the brakes, heart pounding, and jumped out of his truck. It was a child, a boy, no older than 6, his skin burned by the sun, lips cracked, body trembling from hunger and exhaustion. Without a second thought, Jack lifted the boy into his arms, his protective instincts taking over. He didn't know where the child came from or who he belonged to. All he knew was that he couldn't leave him there. And in that single, silent moment, the cowboy's life began to change forever. The storm rolled in heavy and dark that evening, thunder echoing over the Chiricahua Mountains like the growl of an old spirit. Jack Dalton was driving home from town when his headlights caught a flicker of movement on the dusty roadside. At first, he thought it was just the wind kicking up tumbleweed, but then he saw it, a small, motionless figure wrapped in a torn blanket. Slamming on the brakes, Jack leapt out of his truck, his boots sinking into the mud. What he found nearly broke him. A boy, no older than 6, his skin blistered from the sun, lips cracked and bleeding, eyes half closed from hunger. Jack knelt beside him, heart hammering. "Easy now, little fella. You're safe," he whispered, wrapping his jacket around the trembling child and carrying him carefully to the truck. Back at his ranch, Jack moved fast. He lit the fire, heated soup on the stove, and set out clean towels. The boy was too weak to speak, but his tiny fingers clung to Jack's shirt like a lifeline. Hour by hour, Jack stayed beside him, spoon-feeding him broth, keeping a wet cloth on his forehead, whispering calm words through the night. When the boy finally stirred, he spoke a single word, "Chickaw." Jack didn't understand it then, but the way it fell from the child's lips, soft, aching, made his chest tighten. The next day, Jack called the local sheriff and nearby hospitals, but no one had reported a missing child. It was as if the boy had appeared out of thin air. So Jack kept him close, caring for him like his own, waiting for answers that never came. Days turned into quiet routines. Jack taught the boy how to feed the horses, how to whistle for the dog, how to drink milk without spilling it all over the table. Sometimes, the boy would hum a strange melody, soft, haunting, and full of longing. Jack noticed small things. The handmade bracelet around his wrist, woven with tiny turquoise beads and dyed string, the kind made only by Apache women. He'd heard of the nearby reservation, tucked beyond the canyons, but he hadn't been there in years. Still, something about the boy felt sacred, almost destined. Jack didn't speak of it to anyone. He just watched over him, a quiet guardian in a world that had forgotten mercy. Then came the 4th night. The sky was split open with lightning, and rain fell in thick, endless sheets. Jack was mending the firewood stack when his dog began to growl low and steady. The knock came next, slow, deliberate, echoing through the wooden door. Jack opened it cautiously. Standing there were 3 women cloaked in soaked shawls, lanterns flickering in their hands. Their faces were solemn, eyes filled with both sorrow and strength. The eldest stepped forward, her silver hair glistening in the rain. "We've come for the child," she said softly, her voice trembling yet commanding. Jack's chest tightened as she continued, and to thank the man who saved our tribe's last hope. Jack looked back at the boy, who stood quietly by the fireplace, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. Everything suddenly made sense. The bracelet, the word Chaka, the haunting song. The women told him the child was the grandson of their late chief, lost during a storm that swept through the desert weeks ago. They had searched day and night, praying for a sign. And it was Jack who had found him, miles away, on that lonely road. Jack's throat tightened. He didn't want to let the boy go, but deep down, he knew he had to. Some bonds, though brief, are meant to heal what time had broken. As the women took the child's hand and prepared to leave, the boy turned once more to Jack and whispered, "Shijie, father." It was a word Jack didn't need translated. The women bowed their heads in respect before disappearing into the
rain. Standing alone on his porch, Jack watched the lantern lights fade into the distance. The thunder quieted, the night grew still, and he felt an ache unlike anything before, a mixture of loss and peace. And somewhere in the Texas dark, Lila May's words echoed softly in his memory. Kindness always finds its way back. Jack smiled faintly, tipping his hat toward the storm. Somehow, he knew she was right.